Right.
There we go. I can flick to it. There we go. There's the website, and then we can go wherever you want to go on the website. Okay. The trouble is, I can't really see it that well. So we go to
product news and video. That's where we're going to go. Product news and video.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the fourth one down.
Yeah, there we go. So I'll leave that up there. Okay.
We want to go to the second one and the third one. We can show all 3 pages. Yeah.
Here, this one.
Yeah.
And this one.
Yep.
Okay. And we'll also mention PubMed.
We can talk about PubMed, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll go live in 35 minutes. Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 119 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. And this is being broadcast live from the UK Column Studios in the southwest of England on Thursday the 4th, or is it the 5th? I've lost track of days. Thursday the 5th of September 2019. And as you can see, my guest this evening is none other than David Noakes. So David, welcome to Humanity versus Insanity. Thanks for coming along this evening.
Thank you, Ian.
And I'd like to say it's an absolute pleasure, and of course it is, but I know the circumstances are obviously extremely trying for you. And obviously, let's bring up your your partner here, Lynn Thayer, and obviously viewers of this show and my morning live streams and your videos will know that Lynn is currently incarcerated in Fleury-Mérogis prison just south of Paris in France. And this is Lynn's contact details up on the screen right now. So, David, Lynn was lifted off the streets in the UK, about 6 weeks ago now?
Yes, yeah.
And she was initially held in a prison just outside Heathrow Airport. Bronzefield prison. And did you get an opportunity to see her while she was in Bronzefield?
No, I've never had an opportunity to see her, no.
Did you manage to speak with her?
No, but I did get letters from Bronzefield, and I have had letters from France.
And I know that Lynn has been receiving letters, in both Bronzefield, and do you know that she's been receiving letters in France?
No.
So, obviously, she's been in France now for about 4 weeks. What's the word? I mean, I guess you haven't had any direct contact.
Well, France has amongst the worst prisons in Europe. And I did get a letter from her, and she said, whatever you do, don't ever come to France. The evil judge, Jean-Luc Godard, put her sister in prison in France, but she got out in only 4 days. We don't know how. And she said she would commit suicide rather than go back to a French prison. And I think Lynn was warning me of the same thing. Whatever happens, never go to France.
Well, that particular prison, Fleury-Mérogis prison, is listed as being 143% at capacity. Like most French prisons right now, it is extremely overcrowded. And of course, with the ongoing Yellow Vest protests, more and more people are being incarcerated each week with no trial dates being set. Does Lynn have any dates for any hearings?
No. The only thing she knows is that Judge Goddard is back from holiday about mid-September, and she expects she'll get to see him at some stage. But he is only interested in finding justifications for the 9 figments of his imagination. In France, you don't need evidence to arrest anyone. This is the big difference between England, that has habeas corpus, and France that does not. So they can just arrest someone and then go on a fishing expedition. That's specifically illegal in England. They have to have evidence. And that is why the European arrest warrant is completely incompatible with English law and should never have been passed by Parliament. It actually says in the European arrest warrant, evidence is not necessary. You can't pass that in English law. But MPs, lawmakers, judges, certainly the Crown Prosecution Service, don't care about the law. They have their own agenda. They used to represent us. They don't anymore.
Well, I mean, in reality, they are just bombarded with so much that in a lot of cases, I mean, we know that Parliament is very poorly attended, apart from Wednesday at noon for Prime Minister's questions. And so a lot of the legislation is simply rubber stamped in by civil servants, with very, very few of the MPs actually being involved in the process by their choice. They elect not to participate. But
Yep.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, the mantra of civil law in France is that you are guilty of anything that you are accused of until you have effectively been fleeced of everything you own to prove yourself innocent.
That's right. You are guilty and you have to prove that you're innocent. And of course, in a foreign language, when you're in a jail and you have no computer and no access to any form of defense, it is very difficult to prove you're innocent.
So Lynn does actually, I believe, have, or she has instructed legal representation in France.
The prison has given her a list of local lawyers and she has selected one of them.
Again, I know that there are other moves afoot to find, maybe a better known lawyer or somebody who is known to people that are friendly to us. And of course, there's also the common law challenge as well. So I believe that you participated in the common law court process this weekend in Guildford.
Well, no, I didn't participate. I just observed.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. And verdicts were passed unanimously and are being sent to Emmanuel Macron, the French president, to Boris Johnson, and to a court in The Hague, and to other interested parties. So we'll have to see if anything happens as a result.
Can you explain the process? What actually happened at the, what did you observe? What happened at the common law court hearing in Guildford, I believe it was, on last Saturday?
Right. Well, firstly, all our courts are illegal. They are admiralty courts, and they have been so since 1666. And an admiralty court can try ships, cargoes, dead seamen and their assets. So they have to pretend we're all dead. Otherwise, the courts can't work at all. And so when we are born, we are given the certificate, the birth certificate of a dead person. And all this is written up on the website www.mhracorrupt.com. Sorry, .st. That's ST is Panama, and click common law, and all this is explained. So if you go to a court and say, well, I have a common law birth certificate and I am a living person, they are unable to prosecute you. Unfortunately, I didn't find that out until 4.5 years of prosecution. I just didn't find out in time. But do remember that, because you can't be prosecuted actually under the British courts. They are all illegal. So that's really the first part of any presentation to the common law court. And if someone has a birth certificate, and both Lynn and I do, we cannot be prosecuted. So the first...
A common law birth certificate?
Yeah, common law birth certificate, yeah. And if you say you're a living man or a living woman, and we did, we can't be prosecuted. So the common law court is holding the judges accountable because they are acting ultra vires, beyond their powers. Of course, we are in a dictatorship. I knew we would be back in 1970, when Edward Heath was taking us into the European Union. The ministers are not elected, the Prime Minister is not elected, the Parliament has no power, and the European Union is the Soviet system. And in a Soviet communist system, and it is communist, the courts very quickly get corrupted. So we have had the Crown Prosecution Service attacking us. Now, the Crown Prosecution Service and the courts exist to protect the man on the street or the woman on the street from the big guys, from the massive corporation and the government. And now the roles are reversed. The Crown Prosecution Service now represents the massive corporations and the government against the little man, me and Lynn, and our 27 staff, and the 200,000 people who are killed every year by the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency. And for that calculation, go again to mhracorrupt.st. So what happened in our particular case was the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, worked for the big pharmaceutical companies, the $1.3 trillion pharmaceutical companies, against us, who have a few £1,000s between us. And the big pharmaceutical companies are represented by the MHRA. GlaxoSmithKline has directors on the board of the MHRA, and the MHRA only do the bidding of the big pharmaceutical companies. So here we have the Crown Prosecution Service representing the big pharmaceutical companies and the MHRA against us, and their intention is simply to crush us, which they are doing very well. So they wanted a 26-year sentence for me. And then the MHRA illegally called up their opposite numbers in France, Ocalesp, and asked them to sentence us twice. That is illegal under both the Lisbon Treaty and the European Convention on Human Rights. You can only be tried once for an offence under EU law. But the lawyers, the courts, the Crown Prosecution Service, and our MPs don't give a damn about the law, and they are allowing us to be prosecuted twice. So Linda Thayer was hauled up in 3 separate court cases before 3 judges, Judge Rebecca Crane, Judge Sir Michael Supperstone, and Judge Michael Snow, all of whom are utterly corrupt. And even though the French had no evidence because they imagined the charges, and even though the jurisdiction was solidly England, we had 27 staff in England and none in France, and Lynn and I did nothing in France with Gc-MAF, Lynn still gets extradited to France, and I'm due to get extradited next year.
But isn't it the case that Lynn is effectively the bait to get you to France? And that's been admitted, I think, the French have used this process before. They'll go for the partner on the basis that, once they get one partner, then they work on the principle that the other partner will only be too keen to go to France to support their partner. But of course, you're basically throwing yourself into the fire, as it were.
Well, that is right. Lynn is in jail with a number of innocent wives and girlfriends who are held there just so they can catch the husbands or boyfriends. And of course, that is an absolutely stupid idea because Lynn's already told me, for God's sake, don't come to France. So, I'm not going to be caught that way. I will be caught by legal processes, not by having Lynn in jail. We've come across a lot of stupidities over time. One was a big pharmaceutical disinformation specialist company in Belgium who took down 2 of Yamamoto's papers. Now, they think Yamamoto is the only scientist that works on Gc-MAF. No, there are 300 scientists and 150 research papers. And dishonestly taking down 2 research papers doesn't help at all. But they always think that a little thing is going to achieve their ends. I mean, stopping Linda Thar and me won't stop Gc-MAF. There are 400,000 followers on YouTube now. It's disastrous for the MHRA. More people know about Gc-MAF because of everything that they've done to damage us over 4.5 years. I mean, we've had 33 persecutions, 15 court cases, 4 imprisonments so far, with more to come. I mean, and what did we do? We saved 9,000 people from disease. And what does the MHRA do? The CPS supports the MHRA, and they kill 80,000 people a year with chemical drugs that they license. And they kill 120,000 by not allowing safe natural treatments like Gc-MAF. So they're killing 200,000 people a year, and yet the Crown Prosecution Service is backing them. Now, what the Crown Prosecution Service should do is back us, the little guy, and take on the MHRA for killing 200,000 people. That is the proper job of the CPS. But no, the CPS no longer do their job. The courts no longer do their jobs. And we are under a devastating mound of corruption. That is Britain now. After 45 years in the European Union, Britain has become a dictatorship. And if you are just going about a normal job, collecting your pay packet and going out for a drink, you won't notice this. It's only when you try and do something that you realise how utterly corrupt Britain, Parliament, the MPs, the courts, the judges, and the Crown Prosecution Service are.
Well, it's true to say, I know that the statistic that when we entered the EU, there was only one other country in the EU, or in Europe actually, there was only one other country in Europe where the wealth gap was less than the wealth gap in the UK. And that was, I think, Sweden. Today, the wealth gap in the UK is bigger than any other country in Europe. You didn't turn your phone off, did you?
No.
Well, at least it's not you calling me this week. So, over the last 45 years, so, we've had a situation where the rich have got phenomenally wealthier, and people in Middle England have effectively generally become worse off. And at the bottom end, of course, there is absolute destitution. So, and yet we've still got a significant number of people in the country, of course, who think that staying in the EU is a good idea. But they're generally the ones that have managed to sort of keep their heads above water. But of course, there's a significant number of people who haven't, and we'll talk about some of the detail of that a bit later. But I just want to come back to the common law court process, because obviously the statute courts are just not working, or they're certainly not working for the common good. They are working, as you rightly say, on behalf of the corporatocracy.
Well, I prefer to call them admiralty courts, because that's what they are. Statutory courts are actually admiralty courts.
They are indeed admiralty courts, and I mean, I hate to flag this up for you, but this is what you have experienced is actually a classic case of things only registering when it gets right up close and personal. Because I did have a conversation with you about 18 months or 2 years ago about the Admiralty Court process, because I had been through the challenge myself and successfully exposed the attachment of the civil courts, in this case, to the birth certificate, and the fact that they could only deal with you if you acquiesced to their dead man system. But it didn't register with you.
No,
it didn't register, and that's completely understandable.
I've been trying to understand the common law for ages. I've had people come and see me for 2 days and give up and say, just watch 10 hours worth of videos and you'll get it. I said, no, I need it in 1 page of A4. Well, I've written it now myself. John Smith explained it to me after you did, and I've now got it in 3/4 of a page of A4. It's dead simple. All these people don't understand it. It's terribly simple.
It is, absolutely.
And it is on mhracorrupt.st. Click common law.
Excellent. So now let's go back to the process that you witnessed last Saturday, because obviously in the ideal situation, more and more people will convene common law courts, and more people will participate in the process. And at some point in the future, the Queen's Bench will not be able to dismiss a common law court ruling. And of course, at the moment, they know very well what's occurring here. And if what John Smith and the common law court process was trying to do was perceived to be in contempt, then obviously the full force of the Admiralty Court would descend upon John Smith's head. But they can't do that because they know he is fundamentally correct. So, of course, they obfuscate and then just find a reason to dismiss. So, at the moment, they're able to get away with that because obviously the common law process hasn't got traction, but it's building traction. And there were 2 common law courts established last weekend, but we're just going to focus on the one on Saturday in Guildford today, which you witnessed. So can you just talk us through what you actually witnessed and how the day unfolded?
Okay, well, firstly, the Admiralty courts cannot, in theory, overlook something done by the common law courts, because the common law courts take precedent. They are the proper courts. The Admiralty courts are the improper courts.
Precisely.
The illegal courts. But lawyers, judges, don't care about the law. They ride roughshod over the law. And so they are, at the moment, refusing to listen to the proper courts, the common law courts. But yeah, what happened was, Lynn is in the terrifying experience of knowing she's in a jail where 1,000 people commit suicide, and they're asking for a 10-year sentence, and probably she'll spend 2 years, 4 months before that, so she's looking at 12 years, 4 months, and she probably will never see the light of day again. She may die in a French jail. She's approaching 60, and this is the horror. The British courts don't give a damn about British people. They're prepared to extradite the innocent Linda Thayer, who's never done anything in France, knowing she's innocent, just so she can spend 12 years, 4 months in jail and die there.
And the pharmaceutical industry can send the message that anybody who messes with their supremacy will be brutally persecuted.
This is all about protecting the $200 billion profits of the poison of chemotherapy. And they're scared stiff that if Gc-MAF makes it big, no one will ever take chemotherapy again, because Gc-MAF is 1% the cost, 40 times as effective, and it has negligible to no side effects. That's what they're scared of. They want that money. And the only thing the big pharmaceuticals care about, and the MHRA, is money. Vast amounts of it. $1.3 trillion a year is their turnover. GlaxoSmithKline, Britain's biggest pharmaceutical company, makes 30 billion turnover. Now, they killed 83,000 with the drug Avandia and got a $3 billion fine in the USA. Put it into Google, it's all over the place.
Vioxx is another one that, you know...
yeah.
I mean, Vioxx was reaching the point of genocidal.
Yeah. So anyway, so GlaxoSmithKline, their $3 billion fine included a fine for fraud because they knew Avandia killed, and they didn't tell their patients, they didn't tell the regulators, they just collected the money. They're not interested in life, they only want money.
But also, no individual got sued because everybody hides behind the corporate logo.
Yes, astonishingly, they got a $3 billion fine, no directors got prosecuted, nothing. Now, the MHRA licenses more than a dozen drugs that kill, and no directors ever get prosecuted. So Vioxx, Avandia, and opioids have killed 450,000 people, and the MHRA has never prosecuted anyone. But look at us. We saved 9,000 people, and we got 33 persecutions, 15 court cases, 4 prison sentences, and we've got a lot more to come.
So, are you able to explain to us the process of last Saturday?
No.
Okay, I wonder why you should have said that. I wouldn't have kept asking the question. Because I was hoping that because I wasn't there, so I was hoping that you could explain the actual process of the common law court, but we'll have to leave that for another time. So let's focus on the fact that, you know, as we've said, the pharmaceutical industry has a horrendous track record in terms of killing people through properly prescribed medicines. I mean, you know, obviously there's deaths as a result of improperly prescribed medicines or medicines prescribed off-label.
They're so minor, it's not worth discussing.
But the properly prescribed medicine
yeah.
is the primary cause of death, basically,
yes.
particularly in the USA.
Oh, and England.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Okay. So the question that is put forward on many of the videos that I've done on you and Lynn and Gc-MAF is, where are all the people that have benefited from Gc-MAF? Because I think you make the observation that some 11,000 people have benefited as a result of Gc-MAF.
Right, well, 11,500 people have taken Gc-MAF, 9,000 have benefited. And where do you go for the information? Well, obviously, to the gcmaf.se website.
Okay, so let's go to that Gc-MAF .e website. Let's see if we can pull that up.
.se, that's Sweden. You can't tell the truth in England, they take your website down. But Sweden has WikiLeaks. So if you go to the gcmaf.se website and click product, and then click patients' experiences, this is what you get. Patients' results, sorry. And here are 3 pages of patients' results. This is the first one. So this is Dr. Stephen Hoffman, who treated 10 people in Holland.
And we see different types of cancer discussed here. Breast cancer, bladder cancer, hepatitis C, prostate cancer.
Yes. And then we wrote a paper on this with Dr. Blasius from Texas. And we put the two doctors together and their results and published the scientific research paper. So if we go to the second page, this is the first set of trials.
Okay, so this is breast cancer with lung metastasis,
Yep.
Pancreatic cancer with liver metastasis, and ovarian and lung cancer.
Let's look at the ovarian and lung cancer.
So there's the report. Now all of the information on this website has been written up by the medical professionals.
No, I mean, Dr. Stephen Hoffman wrote his own stuff up, but I've written up the rest of this. Well, I've cut and pasted emails from patients. I wrote most of this website.
Okay.
So this will be Gail Bray, ovarian. Now, if we go to the other page, if we go back, there we are, second trials.
Which one's this one? Is this one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The second trials. Yeah.
So there's quite a lot there, and I got sort of fed up with putting them up because there'd been so many of them.
Okay, but now, so the argument is, might be that, well, all of these have been produced by you,
No, I'm cutting and pasting emails that have been produced by the patients.
My point is that your critics would argue that without the original source,
Yep.
then the paper trail effectively is broken.
Right. Well, we have the names, addresses, telephone numbers and email addresses of all of our 11,500 patients, so it can all be traced back to the source.
So, and the question that is often put forward on the videos is, where were these people when you were being dragged through the court in front of Judge Nicholas Lorraine Smith for the Newton hearing?
My own lawyers devastated my case. Firstly, they pounced on me unannounced at a meeting, all three of them, my QC, my barrister and my solicitor, all of whom were legal aid, and told me I had to plead guilty. And I needed time to prepare for that. I was livid, and under duress, I agreed. That was the first damage.
I must confess, I was devastated when you told me that.
Yeah, that was the first damage they did to my case. Secondly, I spent months writing up my case. I emailed it to them a week before the court case. They did not pass it on to the judge or the Crown Prosecution Service, so all my evidence was inadmissible.
So I think people need to understand that, I mean, you were in a weakened state at this time.
33 prosecutions over 4.5 years.
Yeah,
yes.
and I mean, I can recall from my own experience that it was difficult to have conversations with you because you were distracted.
Yes.
By everything that was occurring.
Yep.
And we'd had a conversation about you pleading not guilty and effectively putting yourself at the disposal of a jury.
Well, what they told me was if I did not plead guilty, I would not be able to present my case. Judge Lorraine Smith would not hear my case unless I pleaded guilty. But that's what they told me.
Which in of itself is outrageous.
Yes, I would think so. So, yeah, I was very weakened. I gave in. I should have said, no, I want to research this. But there's three of them, very experienced, got a QC there. They're all saying the same thing. So
they bullied you, basically.
Oh, yes, I was bullied. Very, very definitely bullied. And I agreed under duress.
Now, am I correct, or have I taken something out of context, in that also part of the bullying was that if you pleaded guilty, they wouldn't lay any charges against Lynn in this country?
No, that wasn't part of it.
Okay.
No. So the next thing was I had 20 witnesses lined up. My lawyers cancelled all of the 20 witnesses. I just got one.
And I know Scott Tipps from the National Health Federation turned up at the court expecting to give evidence, and your lawyers effectively blocked him from giving evidence.
Scott Tipps was going to give evidence about the pharmaceutical companies and the MHRA. Cancelling that evidence, they threw him out the court, would not let him come in. He'd flown over from Holland, absolutely devastated my case.
And their argument, because I challenged your barrister as to why that had happened, and his argument was that because the National Health Federation had made you Man of the Year or something, and put you on the front page of their magazine,
yes,
that Scott's evidence was compromised and that he could not be seen to be impartial. But that's a ridiculous argument, because the guy that the MHRA brought in, the consultant that you had been speaking with about the process of licensing, I mean, obviously he was pretty one-dimensional in his evidence. And okay, so Scott may have been a bit one-dimensional on the other side, but to prevent him from giving evidence, it was an absolute travesty.
Yes. There's no doubt that my lawyers were on the other side. So we've got the CPS on the wrong side. They should have been on the side of me, the little man. And we've got my lawyers on the wrong side. Everyone was on the wrong side. Everyone was gunning for the little guy. Everyone wanted to keep 200,000 people a year dying and to keep the profits of chemotherapy coming in. That's what all this is about.
Well, and I have to say that, I mean, I thought that Justice Nicholas Lorraine Smith's demeanour during the, was it Newton or Newman? I can't remember.
Newton
hearing. I mean, he made it very clear with some of his observations that he really did feel that he was caught between a rock and a hard place. But he seriously let himself down in the last hearing or not the last hearing, but the last hearing I attended, where you had dismissed your lawyers, but he insisted that you retain your lawyers. Now, this is unlawful conversion, because you were appearing before the court as a living man, and he was basically saying, well, I'm not going to let you appear before the court as a living man, and therefore I'm going to instruct your lawyers to represent you, even though you had effectively terminated your relationship with them.
Yeah, I dismissed them 2 weeks before, and I told the court that I dismissed them. So the court knew.
And this is unlawful conversion.
Yes, yes.
And on that basis, Nicholas Lorraine Smith effectively prostituted himself and knowingly broke the law to prevent you from presenting yourself as a living man and thereby giving evidence in the first person.
Right. I think Nicholas Lorraine Smith got a telephone call from senior Freemasonry, and he was told what to do. I'm sure he's an honest man, and I don't think he would have done that if he had not been ordered to.
I must confess that over the last few years, I have seen a number of occasions, and particularly when a hearing is wrapped on a Friday and the judge has said, well, I'm going to defer my verdict until Monday. And when the judge walks in on the Monday, it's a completely different person.
Yeah.
It's like they've had a lobotomy over the weekend. Yeah. And yes, I think you're right. They get the phone call and have a few facts of life pointed out to them. And obviously they know that they are prostituting their soul.
Yep.
And unfortunately, obviously that then is reflected in their demeanour. And what I saw in Justice Nicholas Lorraine Smith's behaviour that day was certainly symptomatic of right, like you say, the telephone call and the facts of life.
Yep. This is a stunningly corrupt nation. We've been 45 years in the EU. None of you are safe. The courts are not on your side. They used to be. They are not on your side anymore. And for God's sake, don't come up in front of them, because they will do you down.
And it is getting to the point of civil law almost, in that you are guilty of anything that you are accused of until such time as you've been fleeced of everything that you thought you owned, to try and prove yourself innocent. But even then, if they want you nailed, they will nail you. And unfortunately, we are seeing this on an increasingly regular basis. The only upside of this is that more and more people are starting to realise that the smart thing to do is keep yourself out of hospital and out of court.
Yes, you have to. You absolutely have to.
Because if you end up in hospital or in court, basically you're screwed.
Yep, that's right. Yep. There's no justice in this country. This is British injustice we are talking about.
And here, what we are looking at with this website is the prima facie evidence that Gc-MAF has had a positive benefit. But now there are other sources. I mean, obviously this is your website.
Right, well, now if you go to news, there are some more.
Okay, let's bring the website back up on the screen.
So news, there we are on the right-hand side. That's it.
News, there we go.
Yep.
Okay, so what do we have here?
Well, a load of more cases, some of them really quite fascinating. And then if you go to videos, there are 12 people who've made videos about their results, the best of which is Terry Davis Newman.
Which we played in a previous episode
of
right. Humanity vs. Insanity.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I know there was one case of a lady in Cyprus who was taking Gc-MAF at the time that your premises were raided in this country.
Yeah.
And the MHRA somehow learned that this lady had received Gc-MAF from you, and they raided her house in Cyprus.
Well, she had been told that by 3 separate doctors, Belgium, London, and Guernsey, that she had 2 months to live from liver cancer. So we put it on Gc-MAF, and she had very high stress from her family, and stress causes cancer. So she needed Gc-MAF continually. Normally, when the Gc-MAF gets rid of the cancer or disease, your own Gc-MAF starts up again and you don't need ours anymore. But in her case, she's got so much stress from her family that she always needed Gc-MAF. So 5 years later, she's still fit and healthy. And her name was Joanne Spinks. And she'd moved to Cyprus because she needed more sunshine. Sunshine's good for you.
Vitamin D.
Yep, that's right. And the MHRA heard she was in Cyprus. They are very good at contacting foreign nations. And they contacted Europol and got her to raid her house twice to deny her of Gc-MAF. And she died in May 2017. So the MHRA has killed about 200 Gc-MAF patients. These were people who were recovering and then died.
Well, and they also killed at least one doctor, which was Jeffrey Bradstreet.
Oh, he was just shot. I mean, there's now 102 American doctors being shot. And this is a warning from the big pharmaceutical companies, as I am. Do prescribe pharmaceutical drugs or we will shoot you. That's the warning in America. The warning in England is, look at David Noakes. It's the climate of fear amongst new treatments and small pharmaceutical companies. You produce anything that's any good and you'll get a 26-year jail sentence. That is the message in England.
Now, everybody hides behind, obviously, the Cancer Act of 1939, which protects, well, it was designed to protect the radiation industry, it protects the pharmaceutical industry. Yep. But now, I think about 3 years ago, Lord Saatchi, who lost his wife to cancer, raised a bill in the House of Lords, which was passed, which gave doctors the opportunity to prescribe novel medicines if their patients had basically run out of other options.
If the patient agreed and the doctor agreed, yes, they can do it.
Right. But now that, remarkably, wasn't even mentioned by your legal team in the Newton hearing.
I mentioned it to them. It was part of my case that I spent months writing. But of course, it was passed into law on the 26th of March 2016 and signed by the Queen. And the big pharmaceutical companies, the Department of Health and the MHRA
Buried it.
buried it. It does not exist. We have the right to try, and no, we are not allowed to try. The MHRA want total control over our health. Absolute control. So Gc-MAF is a billionth of a gram of a safe, natural protein that all healthy people make and therefore is a human right. A billionth of a gram. And the MHRA won't even let us have a billionth of a gram of our own protein.
No, because it's too effective, far too effective.
Yes. So this is a dictatorship. This is exactly what you expect from a dictatorship. 200,000 people dying every year at the hands of the MHRA is exactly what you expect from a dictatorship.
And of course, we have the statement that it's expected that 1 in every 3 people will currently be diagnosed with some form of cancer in the course of their life. By 2025, it's forecast to go to 1 in 2. And by 2040, it's forecast that everyone will develop some form of cancer in the course of their life. And despite there being a number of effective treatments, Gc-MAF perhaps being one of the most significant, but none of this is allowed to come to the fore. David, did you ever contact the cancer charities about getting support from the cancer charities to support bringing Gc-MAF to market?
The cancer charities aren't cancer charities. So Cancer Research UK has got big pharmaceutical company directors on the board. Its job is to drive people into the poison of chemotherapy. So Cancer Research UK must kill scores of thousands of people every year. They have a page on their website about Gc-MAF. They rubbish Gc-MAF. They say 10 things which are completely lies, but one of them was it all depends on one scientist. They all believe it's one scientist. No, there are 300 scientists behind Gc-MAF. And another one is one treatment would not successfully treat so many diseases. I'm sorry, but vitamin D will treat 90 diseases. So why shouldn't Gc-MAF treat about the same number, or possibly a bit more? No, Gc-MAF is the #1 cancer treatment. Ian, be quite sure about that. I mean, the results we were getting were absolutely fabulous.
Yep, and that's why you have been targeted.
Yes.
Now, the other question, of course, that is asked is where can people get Gc-MAF? And in fact, I mean, one of the observations that is often made is, why don't you put it into the public domain? But it's not a simple process. It's not like just cooking up something in the kitchen, is it?
Well, it takes scientists. We had 2 scientists making Gc-MAF. One making it and the other testing it, and we put it through 9 tests every batch.
And you've got to have the laboratory environment.
You have to have a laboratory.
Equipment.
It can't be done outside.
No.
It can't be done any other way. It's a 22-step extraction process. I have given full details on how to make it to a benevolent organization. There's a lot of rubbish about you can make Gc-MAF from yogurt.
That's the common one.
And it's not true. You can't prove there is any Gc-MAF in yogurt because there are so many proteins in yogurt. You can't isolate a Gc-MAF, and it's highly unlikely. You may be producing very good yogurt, but it's highly unlikely that it will have any Gc-MAF in it.
So the reality is that obviously it does require the laboratory process. Now, there is certainly a company that is advertising Gc-MAF quite openly in the UK. And in fact, they are purchasing ads on social media to promote it. And clearly, the fact that your case and Lynn's case has been quite high profile, not necessarily across the wider public, but certainly across the alternative community. And so I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the sales of this product have increased quite significantly over the past year or so. But this is Gc-MAF+.com.
Right, well, I wouldn't mention their name because the MHRA are very good at following up in other countries, and they'll bloody well get them taken down.
Yeah, but they don't know where they are, so...
Right, well...
So they, even with their investigative work, they might have a bit of a task going on them. But in your opinion, because people are asking this question as well, obviously this product is being quite heavily promoted on, say, on social media. It's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're at the top end, their sublingual spray is about £500, and their highest strength cream is also about the same price. But for those people who are reaching the point where they've exhausted all other avenues, would you suggest that that is worth exploring as a source of Gc-MAF?
I don't know anything about them. We were obviously making pure Gc-MAF, which you can breathe in and a doctor can inject. They are making creams and sprays which you put on externally. I mean, I'd say give it a go. But I mean, I have no idea.
Okay, so you can't endorse it. Obviously, you haven't.
I know nothing about it.
You haven't put it. You can't. You're not in a position to put it through any kind of test. So
no, I mean, we put Rerum through tests, which Marco Ruggiero was saying Rerum is good for cancer. So one of our tests, our test number 8, was to put, and this is on the website, the film of it, time-lapse photography, 3 days down to 2 minutes. So we'd put human immune system macrophages in with human breast cancer cells, nothing would happen. Would add the Gc-MAF, and in 3 days' time, the macrophages had eaten all the cancer cells. That's one of the 21 attacks Gc-MAF has on the human body. We tried it with Rerum. All the cancer cells were still there after 3 days, every one of them. So that was a test. We knew it didn't work. So then, you know, that's what we would have done with Gc-MAF+. But the MHRA closed our laboratory in England. They closed our office in France. They contacted OCLS to illegally prosecute us, because that's illegal to prosecute twice under the Lisbon Treaty. They closed our clinic in Switzerland. They in Cyprus, they raided giant sphinx, and they did raids in Belgium as well.
and the USA, of course.
Oh, of course, they contacted the FDA and got them to murder Jeff Bradstreet. So the tentacles of the MHRA are never ceasing. They are a stunningly murderous body.
I mean, the reality is the sociopaths that work in the MHRA, and of course they tried to do a hit piece on you, a disgusting hit piece. I mean, something almost out of a school playground. But that's the level of intellect and sociopathy that we're dealing with here.
Yep, that's right.
And of course, one of the prime movers was simply an ex-police officer. I mean, for him to behave in the way he did, it was truly disgusting.
Yep, and yet all these people will sleep well at night because their only love is money. Yeah, they don't care a damn about the people they are killing.
Yeah, no, that's precisely the case. So obviously the website is a first port of call. This is gcmaf.se. Yeah. And then for people who want to take a look at the scientific papers, then the first port of call should be PubMed.
Right. Well, there are 150 peer-reviewed scientific research papers in the world's top scientific journals. Half of these have made it through to the American National Library of Medicine, or PubMed. And if you go to the gcmaf.se website, you'll be given ways of finding them. But you can just go to PubMed and put Gc-MAF in, and you'll probably get.
Okay, but if we go back to the website, we pull the website up again. So how do people get to the links of PubMed?
Well, if you go to Gc-MAF, the cancer cure the world has waited for, and if you follow that down, there are 3 scientific research papers there with their numbers, and if you click on them, they'll come up.
Okay.
And that's a really good article. It tells you exactly what Gc-MAF does. Now, you can find more Gc-MAF research papers by going to the science on our website, and you'll find 40 scientific research papers.
So how do we find this one?
Oh, the science. That's it. Go back. Go right. Go right. Go right. That's it.
The science, sorry.
Right. Then you can see 40 Gc-MAF research papers.
Right.
You need the drop-down menu again.
Okay.
And there are also a list of about 142 scientific.
Links. So there's the links there. I can't.
Yep.
It's not allowing me to. There we go. Let's try the links. It's not allowing me to get on there.
Well, there are 142 scientific research papers listed by name.
Okay, there we go. Links. So this should be people's first port of call. Gc-MAF.se.
Yeah,
and
everything's on there.
Browse that website and see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So now, in terms of raising awareness, and like we said, the good news is that Gc-MAF is coming very much into the vocabulary. So we have an awareness event next Wednesday. If we bring this up. So with Gc-MAF awareness event, now this is going to be outside Parliament. Next Wednesday, that's the Wednesday, the 11th of September, the magic moment of 11/11. But we're asking people to gather at Parliament at 10:30. Hopefully Parliament will still be sitting. The likelihood is that it should be, because that's the day before Johnson had tried to prorogue Parliament. But Prime Minister's question time will be at noon, and the parliamentarians normally arrive between sort of 11 and noon. So by being outside Parliament from 10:30, that gives the opportunity to share information on Gc-MAF with the parliamentarians, who literally are pumping out whatever the MHRA tell them to pump out. They're not doing any research themselves.
We've written to the top 6 ministers and asked for Lynn Tharr to be freed and for Gc-MAF to be put into the NHS. They never ever reply. They're like the courts. They don't give a damn about us. It's worthwhile writing to your own MP. And we'll be giving out on the day flyers to every MP we can find. So we'll just watch them going in and give them flyers. And also on the day, we are going to be going to the Brexit Party head office, the Labour Party head office, and the Conservative Party head office, and we're going to give them a summary and 3 research papers on Gc-MAF, because they need to get Gc-MAF into the NHS, and it'll save 120,000 lives a year. Not that they care about that, and we need them to free Linda Tharr. And it's really terrible for her, because so many people die in French jails, and she may be one of them, and I may be one afterwards. And it's a horrible prospect, and it only happens. You only are at risk of this because our courts are so utterly corrupt.
And of course, you're not out of the woods because you're back in court in October under the Proceeds of Crime Act, where basically the MHRA are going to try and make sure that, after 4.5 years since you were raided, and haven't been able to function because you have no bank account, no access to credit cards, no passport.
Yep.
So now they want to make sure that you never, ever have the opportunity of getting sufficient resources together to challenge the pharmaceutical industry again. And then, after that, not satisfied with that, they're going to try to obviously get you extradited to France.
Yes, and isn't it disgusting that they can use the courts and the Proceeds of Crime Act 2003? The MHRA can use the courts to kill and to stop people from getting the treatment they need. The MHRA is corrupt and the courts are corrupt.
So if you have somebody in the family or you know of somebody, and I'm sure you do, who has either succumbed to cancer, to chemo, to radiotherapy, or a combination of all three, then it is imperative that we get support for David and Lynn at Westminster on the 11th of September. Now, there is one coach that is being run. Now, this coach is effectively being run by the coach company from Burnley under the good graces of one of the management there, who has literally agreed to provide the coach and is simply requesting that, as a £5 minimum, plus anything that you want to donate. But, if you're prepared to secure your seat for just £5, you can access that coach at Burnley at 3 o'clock in the morning. I appreciate it's an ungodly hour, but you can sleep on the coach. And then it goes on to Accrington, Blackburn, and then stops off at the services, the Charnock Richard services, Lim services, Sandbach, Stafford, Norton Keynes on the M6 toll, then Oxford services at M40, and then arriving at Westminster at 10 o'clock. Now, I've had requests from people elsewhere about wanting a coach, but I will look at the prospect of a coach coming down the M1 and up the M5 and M40. But the likelihood is that we're not going to be able to do it for £5 a seat. And the problem is that at this late stage, we would have to commit to that coach fairly quickly. So if you are interested in coming along to the 11/11 event at Westminster, the Gc-MAF awareness event next Wednesday, then please leave a comment under this video, or message me or email me, and I'll try and gauge the response. But it's obviously there is going to be a cost associated with it. It'll simply be whatever the cost of the coach is divided by the number of seats. But then if we don't fill the seats, we have a bit of a problem. So alternatively, if people are prepared to drive and wish to share the fuel costs, also email me and I will get the word out on my Monday morning live stream. That'll be at 8:30, and I apologize for the outrageous wind noise on yesterday's live stream. I won't do that again. If it's that windy, I'll sit in the car. But obviously time is tight, but it's incredibly important that we raise awareness not just of the Gc-MAF, but also of Lynn's plight. And use your own creativity. Whatever banners or printed shirts that you want to wear, because I'm not a great fan of these proscribed protests where somebody provides the banners and everyone's carrying the same banner. I mean, we want people to see that this is a matter of genuine interest to people, and they are not going to be fobbed off with the crass BBC reports demonising David and Lynn, and demonising Gc-MAF, not offering any balance and certainly not offering any time to people who have benefited from having access to Gc-MAF. And of course, there are many, many people who would benefit from the Gc-MAF product if it were available.
Well, neither the BBC nor the Daily Mail, in fact, no newspaper has ever approached us for a comment. They always badmouth Gc-MAF and us, and they never get our side of it.
Well, they use the footage that I think is from 2011 or 12, where they came over to Guernsey, and I mean, you realised that you'd been set up, and basically threw the cameraman out of the room.
Yeah, we actually have the whole 2-hour footage now, which actually I'm uploading to the web at the moment. And you can see how we were set up and how it was pure bias by the so-called doctor. She didn't even know chemotherapy was a poison, for God's sake. So even the media are controlled by the big pharmaceutical companies. It's quite stunning. This is a dictatorship from every angle. Even the media, the press, and the BBC are controlled by the dictatorship. And common law court is one way out of it.
Okay, David, we're almost out of time. I was hoping we might have the time to get on to some, perhaps more current issues, because, of course, you do have a background. You were actually, at one point, a contender for the leadership of the UKIP party.
I was beaten by some complete unknown called Nigel Farage.
Yes. And, the rest, as they say, is history. Anyway, another time. I mean, obviously, there really is no question that there are a significant number of people around the world who are extremely grateful for the work that you and Lynn have done on Gc-MAF, and are obviously saddened by the way in which you are being treated. And one can only hope that in raising awareness of this, getting Gc-MAF into people's vocabulary, getting people to do proper research and look at the papers, the scientific papers that are out there, reading the testimonials, watching the videos of the people who have benefited from Gc-MAF, and maybe, just maybe at some future date, we might see the turnaround that we know we need to see here. So, thanks for everything that you've done there. And obviously, the more support that you can garner, and, if we can get that groundswell, then, the elected representatives eventually would have to recognise that actually this is something that they can no longer abdicate from having an opinion and just bow down to Big Pharma or Public Health England or whatever, and have to start looking at the real evidence. And of course, the real evidence is that, just ask yourself, why is it that if a doctor gets sick, they tend to tell their families that the last place they want to be is in a hospital? Sadly, the NHS, whilst, this is still the best country in the world if you break a bone, probably, in terms of getting it fixed quickly and for free. But, in terms of dealing with health issues that are more deep-rooted, then, we are simply becoming a banana republic, and the care that's on offer only benefits the pharmaceutical industry. And that's, of course, one of the great concerns that, when we do come out of the EU, and that's a whole other issue, by the way, because right now it looks like we're not. And I'll cover that on my live stream on Monday morning. But if we do come out of the EU, then obviously the hawks of the US will circle. And, the NHS, which is pretty much privatised right now, but instead of the government paying, it will come down to individuals through healthcare insurance, etc. So, we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that doesn't happen, and that the NHS and the principles of the NHS, as it was when it was set up, are maintained. Well, if we put Gc-MAF into the NHS, it'll save 10 billion a year. Empty a load of beds, probably empty 30,000 beds. There you go. Well, okay, David, thanks so much for joining me this evening. And this won't be the last time that obviously we have discussions, and hopefully we can be very positive in the future. But I'm about to embark on my 5G tour. And I think this is quite possibly the last time that I will do a tour of this magnitude for varying reasons. But I have a 22-date tour coming up, which kicks off this Saturday in North Devon at Appledore. And this is a sort of precursor, really, because then over next week I will be moving on to Bristol on Monday night. That's the Holiday Inn, Bond Street, Bristol, right in the centre of Bristol there. Car parking right next door to the hotel. These events all start at 7:30. Then on Tuesday, we move to the Copthorne Hotel in Plymouth. On Wednesday, I shall be hot-footing it back from Westminster to get back to the Durley Dean Hotel in Bournemouth for 7:30. Then on Thursday, we're in Hampshire at Langston Quays, which is just on Hayling Island, so serving Portsmouth, Chichester, and towns along the Solent there. And then on Friday, we're at Brighthelm Community Centre, North Road, Brighton. Now, advance tickets for these events can be purchased from the two websites, ianrcrane.com or alternativeview.co.uk. And on those websites, you can see the full listing of the tour. And as you can see that after next week, I move on to Canterbury, London, and the London date is on my birthday. I reached the grand old age of 63. Then to Reading on Thursday, then the following week, Leicester, Nottingham, Ipswich, Cambridge, then the fourth week of the tour, Hull, Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester and Edinburgh. And on the final week of the tour, Glasgow, Belfast, Swansea and Cardiff. And I'm pleased to say that the groundswell of awareness is building. And whilst I can't reveal the location, this time last week, one town council in the southwest voted to implement a full moratorium on any further rollout of telecommunications equipment in the town. Now, that's not the end of the story because, of course, the government is doing everything it possibly can to ride roughshod over local communities. And indeed, last week, it launched a consultation on the rollout of telecoms infrastructure. And part of that is to increase the height at which a mast can be erected without any planning permission from the current 82 feet to 185 feet in rural areas. And of course, the tree culling continues apace as 5G frequencies require unbroken line of sight to be effective. This is a great cause for concern. There are increasing numbers of scientists calling for a moratorium on the rollout of 5G because of concerns over the negative health impacts. And of course, one of the most significant concerns is the carcinogenic impact of long-term exposure to microwave frequencies. And nobody's doing any due diligence. Everyone is assuming that the telecoms companies have done the research, that the regulatory bodies are doing the research, and everybody has signed it off as being safe. And this is not the case. MPs, when asked to respond to questions about 5G, are sending out a pro forma letter that has obviously been provided by Central Office, which simply refers people to ICNIRP, the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation, and Public Health England. And the terminology being used is weaponized terminology because if you read it carefully, there is an acknowledgement that there is evidence of negative health impact, but they dismiss it as insufficient or inconsequential. And this, I believe, is part of the contributory factor to the observation that it may be 1 in 3 people that develop some form of cancer in their life currently, rising to 1 in 2 by 2025, rising to everybody by 2040. So if you have concerns about the health, safety and well-being, and of course every member of every council, every elected representative should, and in fact they are legally bound with their respective constitutions, but these are being ridden roughshod over by the corporatocracy. So if you want to get some insight and meet up with other concerned people in your community, then think about coming along to one of these 5G Is It Safe events over the next 5 weeks. And then on the 27th of October, Sunday the 27th of October, we have AV 10.1, A Culture of Deceit and the Pantomime of Politics. And obviously I specifically selected this date because in theory, Sunday the 27th of October should be the last Sunday that Britain is in the EU. Right now, I wouldn't be putting too much money on that. But a lot can happen. And I know that our speakers will be absolutely on point on the issue. And also, if you want to meet with like-minded people, then come along to that event. And the tickets, there's still a few tickets available, and they're available also on ianrcrane.com and alternativeview.co.uk. And we will be having Gary Fraun making his debut. And in fact, Gary is going to be speaking precisely about this issue of how we find ourselves being governed by Admiralty law on the basis that as far as the establishment is concerned, we are all dead.
Yes.
But once we turn around and say, actually, no, we're not, we're very much a living man or woman, then it presents the establishment with a bit of a problem. And if you'd like to learn how to become more of a problem to the establishment, then you absolutely need to hear what Gary Fraun has to share. And I'm delighted, of course, to be inviting David Dubine back. He will be coming back to give an update on his insights into the very, very significant effects of the grand solar minimum and the extreme weather which is being triggered by the grand solar minimum. But of course, the establishment has spent the last 40 years trying to blame humanity for the effects that they knew would be caused by the grand solar minimum and putting it down to anthropogenic climate change so that they can blame you and tax you. So if you want to get a completely different perspective and, of course, see the evidence that basically you've been conned by this establishment construct for 40 years, and now the new Messiah, the baby greeter, and Extinction Rebellion are pushing that construct. But there's an even deeper agenda, and that is about the absolute destruction and replacement of the existing political process. So that's going to be an event where I know is going to trigger a lot of ongoing discussion. That's AV 10.1, Sunday, October 27th, 2019, A Culture of Deceit and the Pantomime of Politics. Well, that's all from myself and David Noakes tonight. Obviously, our hearts and thoughts go out to Lynn Thayer, who is currently wallowing in an extremely overcrowded French prison to the south of Paris. Obviously, as more information emerges, then we'll update via my live streams, UK Column, and other social media. But if you do have the opportunity and the inclination to drop Lynn a letter, I'm going to play out tonight with the, I hope, let's see if we can pull it up, the address, there we go, or where Lynn can be contacted at, or written to, at the Fleury-Mérogis prison just south of Paris. So Lynn, I know you can't see this right now, but take it as a given. You are very much revered, and you are held very much in our hearts. And may all the powers, wherever they may come from, be with you, and may you be released as soon as possible. And may Gc-MAF get into the NHS, and may all those people who are condemned to horrendous chemo and radiotherapy treatments have an alternative which is non-invasive and provides very rapid benefit. Thanks for joining me this evening. And I will be back with you on Monday morning, but otherwise I hope to see you at one of the venues on the 5G Is It Safe tour. Take care and see you soon. Thanks.